And I'm going to just share this out on our channels here so that other people can get access to it. Let's see here. Here we go. Professionals at work link.
Welcome to the Pragmatic AI Lab.
Looks like this is the link we want. There we go. And we'll put this Pragmatic AI. And Azure. All right. So, how are you doing today, Alfredo?
Doing great. Excited about today. What are we going to talk about today?
So we're going to talk about Azure Cloud Shell and how to just use it for Python shell development, and also the editor a little bit. Just kind of get started. I think a lot of people are very curious about this. So. Yeah. What I'm going to do is just share my screen here. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to share this window, and then I will spotlight this. So yeah, in a nutshell here, this is the Microsoft Azure environment. And if you create a free account, you can be a student, create a free account, or if you've whatever account you already have existing, we can use that. But you can get started for free. That's the main thing. When I first started developing in Azure, what I like to do is start with this, right? I like to start with the Cloud Shell environment. And the reason for the Cloud Shell environment is that my background is coming from Unix and Linux. And really, I think these Cloud Shells are like the new mainframes. And one way to think about the Cloud Shell is that every cloud platform has one. So Google has one. They have Google Cloud Shell. AWS has one. Cloud9. Azure has one. And they're like the mainframe Unix, right? So you used to have HPX, AIX, Solaris. They're kind of the same. They're almost the same, but they're like a little bit different. They run Bash. They're running a container. But in this case, if I type in Python, it's got Python 3.5.2 installed, which is a little bit of an older version of Python. I'm sure very soon they'll update it. But what I would typically do when I get started is create a virtual environment to make sure that I can use Python. So we'll go here and we'll say Python 3-m, and we'll just say venv. So create a virtual environment, and maybe we'll say, live demo or something. There we go. So I create a virtual environment. Then I would source this environment so I can use it. And to do that, we say bin activate. And then from here, I can just start using my Python environment to write code. Now, I could just use Vim. So I could say like, hello here, and start using Vim to edit stuff. And I don't know, put in like, def hello. But one problem is, look, you see, like I've got to set it up. That's kind of irritating. And that's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, Vim can be very bare bones, and you really need to start like configuring and doing all the stuff to make it work for what you're intended. Like in this case, you're writing Python. It takes a lot of effort to get Vim to comply with proper Python. Now, yeah, so, one thing that is not clear to me here is like what type of a machine you're running on. Like, is this a specific? Do you get to pick and choose what you want by default, or you're getting something already baked in?
So with these cloud shells, a lot of them, like with Google and Azure, they just give you one, and you either can pick a Bash one or pick PowerShell, which is actually PowerShell. I actually like PowerShell as well, but you don't get to select it. And so it's more of like its goal is for you to
abstract it away, right? To like
make it like you don't really need power inside of this. Right. You can always spin up a virtual machine.
And what OS is it?
I think it's Ubuntu. So if I just say uname -a, right? I can see Linux.
Yeah, Ubuntu.
Yeah, Ubuntu. Yeah, it runs Ubuntu, and most of these things run like an Ubuntu-based cloud shell. And you could even do like, I think we could even install Python, a different version if we wanted to as well. I won't.
It looks like it's a pretty old version of Ubuntu though, like 16.04 or like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say let's try like sudo apt-get
Nice.
update, right?
Nice.
Sudo. So
Uh,
that might be one problem, right? Is that it's not necessarily because they're giving you these tools, like
Yeah. But it's interesting nonetheless to like know what exactly you're getting into, like what are the restrictions, what exactly you're allowed to do.
Yeah, I always like to just look at the bin directory just to kind of see like, okay, what's in here, what kind of tools are here. But I mean, it's got enough of tools that
Enough to be productive. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
enough
has other versions of Python, right? 2.7.
did you see 3.7?
It has Python 2.7. Yeah.
Oh, 2.7 as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why people are putting 2.7 in here. Even Perl, we can even use Perl in here. I don't know why you would want to use that necessarily.
Well, you were showing you were going to look at the text editor, and we realized them not very good in these circumstances where you need to have something more more
like
ready, right?
Like if I just want to, I don't want to spend too much time configuring Vim. Instead, what I could do is I could click on this icon here, and this opens up a cloud editor. And what I like about this is that obviously Microsoft knows how to make an interactive development environment, right? They make Visual Studio Code, which is one of the best development environments for Python and just for other languages as well, like C#, Go.
Yeah, I've used it for Go, and it's pretty excellent. It has its own like quirks and things, but like it's pretty good.
So to me, this would be how I would edit. I would prefer just click on this and look. I can go back here, and I could just even start over again, and like it has a more sane defaults, like hi, like look, everything auto completes a route. Like the indentation is not
really. So if you import some modules, it will start auto completing. So if you import like the OS module or sys or something,
let's try. Let's just say import OS, and then we could say os.system. It should. Let's see here. If I say os dot, I don't know if they have full like. I don't know.
Perhaps you need to save.
Oh, I see. Save the file.
Happens? Yeah.
And then os dot.
No, it doesn't like it.
Yeah. I think they're still developing. These are like under act. These are. I mean,
this is still good. This is still so much better than what you were trying to do with Vim, though, because out of the box you get all the highlighting and that's pretty nifty.
Yeah. So, right. If I just want to put some, silly code in here, then from here I can actually test it out. So I think that this would be my recommendation when you're using Azure Cloud Shell, right? So that was it was I did a list, right? That's what os.system does, is it lists what's in. So I think this is pretty interesting, and I think the other one where you would maybe want to do this, and if I close it, it goes back, right? And so I can get rid of that if I wanted to, or I can open it back up again. And I think I can also just minimize it if I want to minimize it. Or I could even, I think this just makes it maximize. This is full screen. So I think it's a decent editor, especially if you're already in this Azure based environment and you want to start writing, Python code. I think it's an interesting environment. So the other one that you may want to do as well is install third-party tools and test this out. So if we go back to my, I've typed in history command here and just make this a little bit bigger. We can just source this. So I can just say pound 87. go. I can use that. And then if I want to make a new file here, we'll just say, actually, let's just use the CLI. I think it's empty. I could just go to that file and just make a very small click command line tool. So here we go. So let's just say import click. And then I could just look at, I think I have some click code recently that I've been developing that's probably pretty good. Let's say, I wish they told you, is there a way in GitHub you can see the last thing that you did? Like in a repo?
No, I don't think that's a good one.
Yeah, like that would be kind of neat. Like your own history or something. Like, but I think if I just go here, I thought there was like a way where they could, or I could look at my contributions.
Well, you have activity overview. There we go. Like
where's that at? This
right there.
Testing in Python book, or
if you keep scrolling down, I think it'll show activity.
Oh yeah. There we go. Here we go. So like this is a good one. Multi-cloud DevOps lifecycle. So let's just take this CLI. Perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for. So I'm just going to grab this code and just throw it in here. And what's neat about this is that first, let's just make sure we see that it doesn't work, right? So if I just say Python CLI, boom, it doesn't work because we don't have click installed. And so I could just go through here and test this out. Pip install click. Because I'm in a virtual environment, it'll put it in here. And then if I run through, there we go, none is great none. So I have a small little command line tool, and I can just start building things that require third-party libraries pretty easily in this Azure environment. So it doesn't have a shebang line, or no, it doesn't have chmod plus X. So let's fix that. Plus X. There we go. There you go. So we can see key phrase, and I can now do what it says. We'll say key would be 1, 2, 3, 4. This was like a demo thing I was doing that would pretend like I'm calling some kind of an API, stuff. There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4 is great stuff. So I think this is the way I would recommend if you're starting to do development on Azure, is to before you get way down the weeds and importing the SDK and doing this and all this stuff, you get a free environment to execute a shell. You can create virtual environments. It's got Python installed. You can also go through, use the IDE here, and especially this works well if you're using like the things like Azure App Services, which is their serverless application, or Azure Machine Learning Studio, or any kind of a function or a SDK call to Azure itself. I would recommend this type of workflow. Is that been your experience as well, Alfredo?
Yeah, I think this is pretty excellent. One thing that it's usually a concern with me is that I try to be like, if I'm developing a lot of stuff, like and I think that for someone new starting out and seeing all of these cloud shells available, how can you persist what you're doing? Like, because sometimes the environments are ephemeral and they just go away. Like they're good for like use once and throw it away. But what would happen in this case? Of course, you've cloned the repo, but if you're starting to I built this command line tool, I didn't have a repo around. Is there a way to download these files and persist them?
I would just only work with GitHub personally. Yeah. So I would just go through, do SSH, keygen -t RSA, right? Go through. I already have that created, so I won't recreate it. Take it, put it into GitHub, clone my repo, start writing back and forth. And if you look at some other videos in YouTube, we go through all this. But I think
that's a great convention, because like it removes the questions like, oh, how do I persist this? Like, what do I do here? Relying on something like GitHub or Git, really like just like a version control system, and doing it that way, I think removes the whole problem by itself. So that's a good default.
but another thing, since you mentioned this though, this is another thing I think that's awesome about Cloud Shell is look, if I click this, I can say upload or download, right? Or manage file
Very
system,
nice.
file share. So like in this case, if I want to upload something here, I could just grab, I don't know, here's some picture of a bird or something. I could go through here, and now maybe I want to do computer vision on that. If I refresh and I want to write some Azure computer vision code, look, I have this file here
Perfect.
that I
Yeah.
can write code against. So I think that's pretty cool. And then likewise, like let's say that I did want to download this locally, I could also just go here and go to download, and then I could do the same thing. I could just say CLI.py, and then it lets me download it as well. So that's pretty neat little trick here that you can do is you can, and especially for data science or something like that, or like some kind of a sample project, the fact that, I mean, again, I would prefer to use GitHub, but the fact that you can download and upload, I think is pretty awesome.
Now, one last question that I have, and I've seen VS Code do this even on the web browser, which I think is pretty cool. But do you know if it's possible to collaborate and invite someone and help and like do like live collaboration?
I don't know. I don't know actually with this if that is possible. But it does have command palette, so it
Nice.
looks like what's happening is that they're probably actively developing this. And
Yeah.
I know like
It'll probably get there. Yeah.
yeah, like so there's a bunch of command, like if you're used to Visual Studio Code, you know, it looks like there's a bunch of commands here, like fold all code block, you know, or whatever. I can start using these. Yeah, but I would assume that they would add that pretty soon because that does seem like a fairly killer feature that I would use. Now, one thing I haven't totally figured out that is kind of irritating is that it feels like the UI is a little bit confusing in that if you click this, it actually closes everything. So that's one. But you have to go here and then say close editor, right? But if I go here, if I go back to this is very confusing and probably like a bad UI. It makes you think that this would close the editor, but that does not. That closes your entire shell and kicks you out. You don't want to do that, right? So if I click on this,
That sounds
boom,
bad.
I'm out, right? And it's like, oh,
and then you start from scratch again.
Yeah. I mean, you can also, you know, this is a good one to know about those. You can do history, right? And then with history, you can always.
But the files are gone, right? You don't have.
No, they're there. No, they're there. But if I do ls, it's just that it closes the shell for you.
Oh, that's good though. It doesn't remove all the stuff.
And you can also, if you go here, you can also reboot this thing, which is pretty cool. So you can actually, if for some reason it's acting weird or something like that, you can also reboot. And I think the only other one that we could try real quick is as I actually used to do a lot of stuff in PowerShell. So let's just try that real quick. Let's just see what they do. See, this is pretty cool. If you want to try out PowerShell, you don't have to have Windows, which is not recommended even to your worst enemy to have Windows operating system.
I used to have a boss that he was. I mean, I think it was a great idea. Like I don't use Windows for development, but he used to work on Windows exclusively, and his reasoning was interesting. He said, "I'm using Windows just so that I can get all of the pain points of development in Windows, and I can address any problems there." Commendable for sure, but still pretty rough. He would run into problems all the time.
I know it's almost like you know, there's certain words in English that are similar in Spanish, but not many. But like you know, like Tukasa or Sukasa or something like that, and like where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, most people know this. Like in PowerShell, like you can say ls, right, and it works. It works the same. Uh, like tipika, right? Like is like, hey, that sounds like, hey, that's probably English. That means typical. Like so, you kind of have a little bit of this here, but in but yeah, I would probably most of the time stay with Bash personally. But one other thing I'll say as well is that the other thing that's nice about these Cloud Shell environments is they have the built-in hooks, right? And this is the other reason why, like, I mean, why would you install the Azure command line tools on your laptop if you have Cloud Shell? It doesn't even make sense, in my opinion, right? Because it would just be a whole bunch of hoops you have to jump to and update it. Instead, though, look, I can do things like manage Kubernetes. I can do deployments. I can find things. I can do manage virtual machine images. Like you can just list through here all the different things. And in fact, I think one of the ones that I use sometimes is the AZ, let's say storage, for example. If we say AZ storage and you say, I think there's a listing here that it shows you account, right? Like, and it will just show you stuff about your account, like, encryption scope or file service properties or whatever. These are like, I don't have to manage this. So for me, this is if I'm inside of the actual cloud environment. This is the other reason. If you are a command line person, they've got everything already hooked into it for you. So why would you put this on your laptop and start running all these commands? It could be very uncomfortable, right? I mean, these are complex commands.
These are complex commands. Yeah, I agree. It's a bummer that they have. Hopefully, someone that works in the AC command line tool sees these, but it's a bummer that you're really trying to get a feel for what each command is doing, and it's barking at you with errors. I don't think that's an error condition. Like, hey, you didn't pass. That's one thing that I try to do when I build command line tools. You don't pass any arguments, and I want arguments. I'll give you the help menu. That's probably what you want.
Yeah.
But I'm just nitpicking here. Azure is, and Microsoft in general, they have done a tremendous good job here, and they were kind of like behind in the cloud race, and they've like really put a good chunk of improvements here. I really like these.
Yeah, I think the Azure App Service in particular is one of the ones like for example, deploying like a machine learning application. Like here's an example of something I did before that's like a machine learning application. And what's neat about it is that I just deployed it via just the command line, right? And I can see different calls to it and response to it. So it's a complete serverless application that I was able to actually deploy directly via this AZ command. And I also did in Python. In fact, I think I have it right here. In fact, if I just go here, you can see that it will recognize essentially the just a Flask app, as long as you have a Flask app, and it will take everything in this directory and it will actually just deploy it for you automatically. So that is pretty neat as well. And if you want to look at it, like this is an example of this, right? And I forget what the command is. It's like AZ app deploy or update or something like that, or something like that. I forget what the command is off the top of my head, but it's something like that. Like you can just easily do it like an update, and it just takes whatever's in your directory and deploys it. So in fact, I could see that probably because I could look at the Azure pipelines and it'll tell me inside of here probably. So that's another thing, is if you hook into Azure pipelines, you also can start to look through how you're building stuff and running it. and how it deploys it, and you can see some of the commands as well. Although it's a little bit different with Azure pipelines. But in a nutshell, if you're using the Azure platform and you're doing Python and controlling it, more than likely you should be using the shell, and I would definitely use Cloud Shell.
This is excellent. Thank you, Noah, for demoing this. Pretty useful.
All right. Well, that's it for us. I think anything else you want to say?
No, I think this is great. I think this is where actual development is gearing towards, especially with something like Python, where you don't need these super intensive build processes and all of this stuff. I think it's great, and I think it's very interesting to be able to see where these tools are going, especially at least for me in the area of collaboration. I think anything that allows me to collaborate with other people it's tremendous. But I think they're getting there. Pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're doing cloud, you should probably be using one of these environments. Otherwise,
Right.
You're probably doing it wrong.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. That's it for me as well. We'll talk to you next week.